Greetings, everybody, and welcome to City Lights Live, the online edition of the City Lights events calendar. I'm your host, Peter Maravellis. Before we begin, as is customary at the outset of each event, I would like to acknowledge that we are beaming to you from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, also known as the San Francisco Bay Area. We would like to take this moment to offer our respect to those who came before us as stewards of the land. On today's program, City Lights and Seven Stories Press celebrate the publication of Village Voices, a memoir of the Village Voice Bookshop, Paris, 1982 to 2012. It is published by Seven Stories Press, and we are delighted and honored to have with us today its author, the great bookseller Odile Hellier. Village Voices is a celebration of the history and legacy of the Village Voice Bookshop in Paris, which was founded by Ms. Hellier in 1982 and which served as a hub of social life and refuge for artists, writers, enriching the anglophone literary life of Paris for over 3 decades until its closure in 2012. During the writing of this book, Ms. Hellier researched decades of archival footage to present anecdotes and insights from the spontaneous and informal exchanges that occurred among generations of literary and cultural icons. The Village Voice Bookshop served as celebrated rendezvous with readers and distinguished roster of American and other English-speaking literary figures. Many a notable writer crossed the threshold of this iconic bookstore. These included Allen Ginsberg, Toni Morrison, Michael Ondaatje, amongst many, many others. Village Voices is a lifelong curatorial project, a conversation traversing across time and an historical archive lovingly created by a bookseller seeking to preserve the history and memory of her much beloved bookstore. Odile Hellier was born in the south of France during the Second World War and raised in the region of Lorraine. She is a Russian language and literature scholar as well as an educator. She is also a trained translator and interpreter in international relations. As the founder of the Village Voice Bookshop that operated in the heart of Saint-Germain-des-Prés in Paris, she created a cultural hub like no other. Joining her in conversation today is City Lights' very own Paul Yamazaki. Paul Yamazaki has been the principal buyer at City Lights for more than 50 years, a champion for national and global literature, writers, publishers, and independent bookstores. Mr. Yamazaki was the recipient of the National Book Foundation's 2023 Literarian Award for Outstanding Service to the American literary community. He has mentored generations of booksellers across America. His book, Reading the Room, A Bookseller's Tale, was recently published by Ode Books. We will be posting links in the chat function of your Zoom dashboard with which you may purchase copies of Village Voices. We will also be featuring a Q&A towards the end of the talk. You may also post your questions and comments in that same chat function. So join us now in offering a warm welcome to Odile Hellier and Paul Yamazaki. It is such a great honor to have you with us. Welcome to City Lights.
Thank you, Peter. Odile, it's such a pleasure to have you join us here this morning in San Francisco and evening in Paris. And so I'm hoping that maybe we could start this conversation for somebody like me who's never been in Paris and to walk through what it was like for you to open your door at Village Voice every day. And what did you see as you walked through the door?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I even did not think about it, like it was, you go to work and you go to your bookstore. But in fact, it's very interesting because I would say that when I did not open the bookstore, when a colleague, opened the bookstore, when arriving there, in that little street, a very narrow street, Rue Princesse, I would stand in front of the place, of the windows, and I would look at the books. We were changing the displays very often, like several times a week. So it was a pleasure for me to see, how the books were there to have a conversation with the passers-by. And so I did that, and through that window, I could see also the bookstore that was, what Hemingway called, a place, a very well lit place or lighted place. And this was allowing me to see all the colors of the books that were there, and entering the store, it was a sea of colors, but also of stories.
No, I totally agree with you. I think one of the things that I learned early in my bookselling career is that our colleagues make the store. Like, I have not done any display work in decades because they do such a good job. And so it's one of my favorite things is actually, just like yourself, to when I do go to the store is to actually spend several minutes looking at what they've put in the windows before actually kind of crossing the threshold. So you spent a decade in the United States and, at a really interesting time in American bookselling. And you've noted that, you were kind of inspired and excited by the energy that you saw in American bookstores. And can you talk a little bit about what you meant by energy?
The energy, well, it was, first of all, the 70s were a fantastic time to be in America. It was a time when you had people, fighting for their rights. And it was not just the African American people, it was also the feminists, it was also the gender studies. And there was still Vietnam. And, I was on the first year, I was in Amherst on a campus. And it was extraordinary to go to all those talks and to talk to people, even on the lawns, you were people reciting, poems, and there was an energy, an extraordinary energy. And when I came back to France, and then I went back to the States, and altogether I was 10 years. And one of the pleasures for me when I did not work was to go to bookstores and to listen to the debates. The debates were very important to me because I learned much more through debates than perhaps, through reading even the papers. And this was very important to me. And in fact, when I came back to France, and when it was the end of the 70s, when I came back to France, I could feel that energy. I missed that energy very much. And this is how, little by little, it took about 3 months, 4 months for me to decide, what do I want to do? I mean, I was working, but I was not satisfied with the work. And I felt that this is what I really wanted, those debates in bookstores, and also the Village Voice, review magazine was so important for me too. It was an alternative, way of knowing the country, and with also all the possibility of discovering arts, spectacles and so on. So I really felt, that there was something I'm missing in Paris, in spite of the fact that 10 years before, it was the 68, 69 years, and it was very dynamic as well. There was an effervescence, of course, but, I don't know why exactly, but what I found in Paris was not what I had enjoyed in the States. And it was that artistic energy. It was those books. It was the different books, Going through the bookstores in Paris, there were many English books. And it was not at all the books I had seen or read in the States. I had in my hands, and talking about them. So this is how the idea, came to me. Why not try? Why not? Try to do something that was impossible for me to imagine. I never had the least idea that I would one day I would love to open a bookstore. It was impossible for me even to think about it. And suddenly I was there. Something was telling me why. And then I sat down and wrote my project. And it was very well received. I was very lucky. It was very well received by family and people, and friends, of course. Yeah.
Well, so much, like City Lights history, like in a certain way, starts in Paris in the conversations with George Whitman and Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I mean,
Yeah.
both their stories, I think, began as an idea, as a conversation of how exactly what a bookstore can provide and what they weren't seeing at that time, and just almost in exactly the way that you described, just and why you wanted to open the Village Voice.
Yeah, this I did not know. I remember Ferlinghetti and Mr. Whitman together, and you are going to laugh, but I remember the both together coming to the Village Voice one day, and George Whitman looking at me and saying, Odile, you don't organize readings on Mondays. Mondays, it's me. And it was with Ferlinghetti, we did not say anything. But I remember that day, it was early in the early years of the Village Voice, maybe 1 month, 2 months after. And George came, don't organize a reading on Mondays. So I never organized any readings on Mondays.
And that over the 3 decades, you never did Monday?
No, it was always other days, on other days. Yes, yes. So yeah. So of course, George Whitman was very important in Paris. I mean, still important. The daughter, took over, and it's still important, very much so. Yes.
No, we're very, very fortunate that Sylvia
Of course.
has continued and expanded the legacy that George and Lawrence started, and that
Yeah.
you are very.
In fact, I will tell you, I found your book next to mine in the little corner devoted to books on booksellers, on bookstores.
I'm honored.
Yeah, so it was there. So I said, oh my God, it's I'm going to get it. Yeah. And I read it with great pleasure. Of course, it was very interesting.
So the vast constellations of possible names that you could, like, why the Village Voice? You mentioned that how inspirational, but there was a lot of things that were inspirational to you, and just that drew you to bookselling. But why particularly the voice?
The voices. First of all, as you say, it is the Village Voice magazine, that I would read regularly, and also there was something different. I did not want to have a bookstore like the other bookstores, I saw in Paris. It was not meant to. Today, you have fantastic bookstores, very dynamic, very energetic, definitely. But at the time, it was not the case. At the time, it was the bookstores, the regular bookstore. I knew in the 60s, a bookstore in Paris, Maspero, which was very, very, very well known. And Maspero, I remember coming back, sometimes I was coming back from the States to be with my family. And I remember bringing African-American books to Maspero, hoping that maybe they would translate them, But most of the time, the bookstores in the beginning of the 80s were not that stimulating, I felt, and because also they were very different from what I had seen in the States. So this is the Village Voice represented, joy and energy, different, and I don't know. From the beginning, I knew that this would be the name, and as you probably, read in the book, every year we had the visit of the journalists from the Village Voice, and they were very nice and joyful, and they were coming for jazz, I believe. They were all, writers of jazz or something like that. And every year they would come, jokes, and go away and say next year. And they were very happy to see the Village Voice magazine on, very, very visible. And we were selling it every week, definitely selling out every week.
My recollection of visiting the Village Voice office, I was once going to talk to M. Mark and Nat Hentoff.
Yes.
And so as you could probably see in my background, I have stacks of books. The only
Yeah.
person who had higher stacks than mine were Nat Hentoff, where there was literally no place to sit. And so we had a conversation among these towering stacks of books and manuscripts. And then,
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, yeah. No, it was a great
so
time.
one of the other things that City Lights and Village Voice shares in common is the extraordinary program of readings and of authors coming through that Peter Maravellis has done for us for 3 decades. And that kind of one of the joys of reading the Village Voice was your descriptions of who came through, kind of what the highlights were in these various different conversations as you went through the archives of your tapes, and you distilled for us kind of the essence of those things that you tied to. So how did that begin? How did you start thinking this would be an additional part of what we do at Village Voice as a bookstore, that we would actually present the author's voice to the readers in person?
Um, yeah, it is interesting. It is a question, very interesting question. I do know that I was impressed by the writers who came. I was impressed by the way they were very, very natural, very simple, very warm. And this was very essential. I mean, what I knew of writers in France, they were a little bit, aside, they were part of the higher society in a way. I'm sorry to say that, but today it's different. But at the time, you were revered, you revered, writers. And suddenly, when I opened the Village Voice, first of all, I had those young American writers who were very, very active, and they created many different things, and 2 or 3 times a week even we had readings, owing to them. But at the same time, to have those very well-known people, who came right away, I was surprised how simple they were, how sympathetic. Yeah, they were very nice, and I was stunned by that. And it's how, talking to them, listening to their work, the way they would present the work, the way the people, were asking questions and they would answer them, was very precious to me. And at the beginning, I probably, was learning about those things, and later on, it became, a gift. It was a gift for me to have those writers, all those writers who came and who their books were very different one from another. And yet each time it was so enriching, not just me, but the people, because their questions were always very interesting, and forcing the writers or asking the writers to go a little bit further into digging, in their thinking, in their what they wanted to write next. It was a whole scene of interaction and of respect, also respect for the work, respect of the author, and yet very simple, very, very cool in a way.
Well, it was so prescient of you to kind of record these and to keep them safe and sound. And so what was the experience like for you to go through 30 years of both audio and video to kind of to start thinking about this and to start thinking about how you're going to shape the book?
Yeah, I had the idea of taping those readings because they were so interesting for me. It was incredible. I mean, at the beginning, for instance, Ginsberg, I had no idea. He came, Ginsberg and Faligetti and the other poets with them. They came very early. It was maybe 3-4 weeks after we opened the bookstore.
Wow.
And I did not have any idea, I did not think about it. I had not thought about it. But little by little, when I saw all these people with different not only books, but styles, the way they talk. Each one had a different way of talking, of speaking, of interacting with the public. I thought, but I don't want to lose this. I really felt it was really important. So we had small tape recorders, on the corner of the table. And even one time, it was stolen. And then most of the time, I never will listen to them over those 30 years, never tried to see if it worked, And then when I packed all those boxes back home, then I started to listen to them. And in fact, already I knew a little bit more than when I started, So those little tapes, those were small tapes, I took them to a specialist to turn them into CDs so that it was easier, to listen to. But I remember that the first time I took those, in fact, this is the only time I took those tapes to a specialist, to a place where they turn those things into CDs, and I mean, not that even CDs now, they don't exist, but to do the work. I remember that when they came back, when I got them back, out of 200 tapes, I had at least 50 tapes that were inaudible, and that were I could not use. So you see, it was very primitive. Our system was very primitive, but the fact is that some of them were working. I mean, fantastic. I could listen, I could transcribe, and this was a joy because I could, rediscover those voices and what they said, the way they read their books and so on, and it was a treasure. Then at that point, I thought that maybe I would contact an institution or a university that would want to take those tapes, but doing the work, of listening to them one after the other, I decided, no, I don't want those voices to be lost. I really want those voices to be in their juice, to be with the environment, to see the noises, to have those questions. And this is why I decided that I would write, I would do a narrative, a written narrative of those voices. And this is why it took a long time for me to do it.
So the book is actually an involvement of your listening to these tapes.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. That's the only thing. I mean, what I did by myself is to remember very well those readings, and I knew very quickly. I knew before even starting, listening to those tapes. I knew the authors I really wanted to have in the book. And it's only as I developed, the structure, that I added people, because it would be interesting to have this kind of view, of the same theme, to have another regard on the theme. That's how I brought other people, but the very foundation of this book is really the people I had, in mind, the people I really wanted in the book.
Well, one of the fun parts for me is that American writers who were living in Paris at the time, like Mavis Gallant and Edmund White and Jake Lamar, and you brought that particular time in their lives into kind of a much fuller appreciation. And I love the story of like how Mavis Gallant and the evening with Margaret Atwood was.
Yes. This was a very special evening, by the way, because I had several, stars in a way. I had Margaret Atwood, and with her work I like very much. I had Mavis Gallon was supposed to introduce her, and also Richard Ford. And Mavis Gallon called me in the morning saying, Odile, I'm very tired. I would not like to be first with Margaret Atwood. I would like to be, last. And it was a Sunday, and I was not able to reach Richard Ford to say, you have to come first. And so it was a funny way. I mean, it was a scene, but at the same time, everyone was joyful. And the bookstore again was, of course, packed with people. I mean, it was full upstairs and downstairs. And finally, everything went well. But at one point, I felt, oh my God, it's a bit difficult to have 3 stars at the same time. And finally, I laughed a lot at night, when I thought a little bit about, it's a bit stupid to have all those great people together. And the translations, because it was they read at the Village Voice because they were launching their books in French. So this is something that we did very often, to have bilingual readings at the Village Voice. And I realized that the translations were a little bit funny in regarding the title, and this is why it's a special evening for me with Mavis Gallon. But Mavis Gallon gave many readings at the Village Voice, and we became friends. I mean, she was a very close friend, someone I really admired a lot, and Mavis loved to send notes all the time. So I have plenty of notes by Mavis, and they are so precious to me, so precious.
Yeah, we're very grateful to the New York Review of Books Classics that has made Mavis's work again available, because for a while,
yes,
the work was very hard to find here.
Yeah, it was very beautiful with Ondaatje and Russell Banks and Lahiri. Those 3 writers who gave Mavis the possibility of being, rediscovered, I would say, rediscovered, because even in France, she was not very well known when I opened the Village Voice. But in 60, it was, I don't remember the exact, it was the 20 years of 68, I believe, the celebration of 68. And it's only then that she was translated. It's amazing, but she was not known in France. And after that, she became known, and also those books, really helped, to rediscover her.
Another writer that Village Voice and City Lights has presented both many times is Barry Gifford, and I understand that Barry was kind of also essential in getting our wonderful 7 Stories edition onto the desk of Dan Simon.
Oh la la, extraordinary. Those editions are fantastic. And it was it was with you recently to present Disappearances as well, and extraordinary is his latest work. Very different and talented person, like drawing, like he's writing. It's amazing. But no, Barry was one of the first writers or authors to come to the Village Voice, to open the door, and the door open, and someone who was very natural, and read first his poems, his Venice poems, he was, and some of the very early books, and then it came again many times to present his books, and to read and to discuss discuss them. So no, he is a very precious person, and he's the one also who read the book, and owing to him, the book is out.
So did you tell Barry that you were writing this book, and then like
No, not really. I did not tell anyone when I was doing it. I was doing it in my little corner, and it called me. He was in Paris, for to meet some people, and he had many projects. In fact, yeah, in music, in the musical domain, and he called me up. And he said, come and join me for a coffee or something like that. And I did. And this is when I told him, I'm asking, what are you doing, Odile, now that the Village Voice is closed. And I told him, well, I am writing, about the Village Voice. I'm writing the voices of the Village Voice. And that's it. And after that, nothing. And not just when the book was finished, it happened. He happened to call me for something, and then I told him, I wrote the book and it is written. It was 4 years ago, and he said, but send it to me, and I did not want. I felt very shy, and finally I did. And that's it. It had, is the one who started the whole process, the process of publishing it. Yeah.
And it's my understanding that we owe your conversations with Dan Simon for this wonderful introduction to give a framework to yourself and a little bit of your biography and how you came to be a bookseller and Open Village Voice. And is that something you wanted to expand on a little bit?
Yes, I would say that I could expand a little bit on my life path or professional path. It's true that in my childhood, we did not have that many books that children do or have now, and it was something very different in the 40s, 50s, but I started reading a lot when I was an adolescent. This is when I read a lot. But before that, I remember reading, but it was not as, like kids today with so many books. No. And then I began to read a lot, and I was very, very much writing, little pieces here and there, so on. And my life, my professional life, began with the mother of a friend. It was at the end of my studies in lycée, and I met the mother of that friend, and it was at her place, and I was amazed by all the books around me. And those books, I could not read, what they said. I just could decipher because I had learned Greek at school, and those books were written in Russian, and so I could read, because the alphabet is not that different. So I was fascinated by that environment. And she just told me, Odile, would you like me to teach you Russian? And I started, coming to her every week on Saturday, I remember, and I learned Russian, but it was not the way you learn Russian in school. It was for reading, it was for talking, she was an extraordinary, fantastic, she was a very beautiful person. And so it was, I believe it was the last year of my lycée classes, and I went to Rennes. I lived in a provincial city in Brittany, and I went to Rennes, the major city, Brittany, and there I learned Russian. And from learning Russian, I went after the exams and so on. I went to Moscow, where I spent a year, and then came back to France, and was able to become a teacher of Russian language. And this was my life. I mean, I never thought that I would not go on, with this project. but the invasion of Prague by the Soviet Union in '68 was something that I could not stand. I knew that I could not teach a language that represented that. Of course, the literature, Russian literature, is absolutely extraordinary. I'm not saying that it is not, but it's just that, you know, teaching language to kids and to young people, I think you have to believe in the what it means, you know, to learn a language. It's not just words. It is also the history of the place. It is also, you know, the society. And this was an offense to me. And this is how I decided to quit, to quit, simply to quit, and to find a job, a small job, and at the same time to enter the school in Paris that trained people to become interpreters and translators for international organizations. And of course, you know, after my year in Russia and after my, you know, not only my year in Russia, but understanding a little bit more, you know, the Cold War, understanding a little bit more what it meant, you know, to have those two countries, America and the Soviet Union, to fight and to compete. You know, I was understanding a little bit more than when I started the Russian language. And I, at that school, I mean, I stayed a year at that school, and I asked them to be able to take a year off because I felt that I needed to discover America. You know, if I wanted to be in international, you know, organizations. So I had the right to do it. I mean, they gave me the possibility of doing it. And so I went to America, where I had a little job and a visa for that little job. And that's how I changed. It changed the course of my life. I mean, definitely.
And your years in the United States, you live mostly in New York?
No, in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
In Washington, D.C. I lived in Washington, D.C. The first year, it was in Amherst, and with a campus, with the university. And then after that, when I came back to France and went back to the States, immediately after 3 months, I was in France. I was working in Washington, D.C. for an Algerian company, the oil and gas company, and as a translator.
And that's how you discovered Kramer's, the bookstore?
Definitely. Yes, definitely. It was such a joy for me to go there. The politics and the prose did not exist yet. They opened, I believe, at the end of my stay in Washington, D.C. But the Kramer's, it was really the center, the very center for me. And in fact, for quite a few years, I lived not very far from Kramer's. And no, it was a joy, really. And this
It's
was
a marvelous thing to go into Kramer's, pick up a book, have a drink, and sit there.
Yes. Now it has become, as I believe, it has become a huge thing. But at the time, it was still a small bookstore and
Very small, yes.
just a few and coffee, you know, a glass of wine. But you know, I believe that now it's enormous. It's huge. You know, I believe
Much
so.
bigger now. What hasn't changed that much is Three Lives. They're in a different location, but it's still.
Yes, when I was in New York, when I would go to New York on weekends, I would go to Three Lives. Oh, I remember very well, you know, that place. Yes, definitely. And I don't know if it has changed that much. I have no idea because I was not there recently. But you know, it was something very important to me. Yes.
I can say that it has changed locations, but the spirit and the beauty of its selection of books is
The same, yeah,
is
yeah.
passionate. That curiosity, that kind of, when you speak of kind of like your reading and how you selected books for the store, just is kind of also very inspiring. And so
Yes, yes. You speak in your book about what it is, to buy books. It's a very difficult job, as a matter of fact. It's very difficult. And I remember, how happy I was when the reps came to the Village Voice and to be able to go through what they would recommend us, but also to have, an idea of what I wanted. It's not everything that I would go through, not everything at all. And I was wondering, in fact, how you do it, because it's, apparently you do it very, very well. And for me, it's not something that everyone can do, to have this extraordinary choice of books, and what is going to be the books, what are going to be the books, to recommend to our different people. We have many different kinds of yeah, books, people who buy books, buyers, and it's very difficult sometimes to know what to buy from the reps. How did you do it?
Oh, I think I'm very fortunate, one, to like my colleagues at City Lights who are really incredible, passionate and deep readers. And so having those conversations, and then like you, the publishers reps kind of opened the doors. And so when I became buyer at City Lights was going through a period where we were almost out of business. And so
You said that in your book, yeah.
and so one of the benefits of being so close to the precipice is that you cannot make a wrong decision because you're going over the cliff anyhow.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, but there was nobody to actually learn from. And so it was the publishers reps who actually started guiding me towards other booksellers who I should be talking to, where I can get a sense of like how to do my craft, and and I think the other important element of which became a really fundamental, is just asking if a book that's in your hands and you really like this book, how did this book get into my hands? And that inevitably leads you back to the editor, and to having these conversations with the editors over time allows me to look a lot smarter than I actually am, because you know what a particular editor does well, and you can take a chance on something that you have an author you've never heard of, and maybe haven't had a chance even to read a page of this book, but this editor does a particular type of thing very well. And so
Yes.
it's through those conversations that
Mhm.
I'm able to do these things. And then it's
Yes, I
so
do
for yourself,
understand.
you talk about how you read and but so were the publishers reps coming over from
From the States and from England. Yes, they were
wow,
coming to us.
okay.
Yes, I remember the first person who came, who pushed opened the door of the Village Voice. I'm still a friend with her now. She lives in France. She became an editor in France, and we are still friends. She was so important. Because she gave me books that I did not know. She recommended me books that I did not know, and it was an incredible discovery for me. So no, I do know how sometimes it's frustrating, because you know that that publisher is not going to have the kind of books you want, that's for sure. But little by little, you learn, and you know what to take from that publisher and what to take from another publisher, and to do a mix. Finally, you have the books you want in the bookstore for the season, and to present them to to the customers. So it's no, it's I don't know. It's I knew also what I did not want, what I wanted and I did not want, and also, and I'm sure it is the same for you, the customers who come to the bookstore, they give you ideas, because they say, I would like this book, can you order this book? And they give us the books we should buy. And one of them, for instance, and I talk about it in the book, it's a friend who told me, Odile, you know, I've just read this book and it's absolutely extraordinary. You should read it. And immediately I read it, of course, and reading it, I was in awe, and I really wanted to have that writer, that author, and I called the representative of the publishing house, and told her I would like to have, and it was Daniel Mendelsohn. I would like to have Daniel Mendelsohn read at the bookstore, and it was not known in France. And she says, Odile, I see what I can do. 30 minutes later, I had Daniel Mendelsohn on the phone saying, I am coming to Paris and I will be there. You know, things like that happened. Not very often. It was one thing or the other, but such miracles, you know, that, you know, I feel that I was very lucky that chance was with me when I was doing, you know, this work at the Village Voice. And unfortunately, I closed it. I mean, it was after 30 years, I had to close it because we noticed how difficult it was to have people in the bookshop, you know, having their phone. Now it was when you had the phone, and to press their button for Amazon. You know, this was the difficulty for me. It was difficult to take it, and also we had an international buyers. People would come to the Village Voice from other countries, and these people, you know, they started buying from Amazon because, you know, there was no weight of books, you know, to take home, and I could feel that it was becoming very difficult. I hear now that bookstores are coming back, that many bookstores are opening in New York. I heard about that in New York or in the States. And but I see also that there was 10 years where we felt or we thought that bookstores would disappear, and they did not. And it's a real joy to hear that, to know that there are new bookstores opening. But I don't know if you read the article by Menand. It was, I believe, in the
Yes, in the New Yorker.
You did. And what scared me a little bit is when he says for an independent bookstore, it had to become a boutique. Do you remember that sentence?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you do. And this frightened me a little bit because it was a boutique for me. Maybe I do not understand what it means exactly. But a boutique is like something with sells many different things that are not really books, you know. So I was wondering what is your feeling about that?
Well, I think this is a conversation that's ongoing with American booksellers. It's, as you know, the margins selling books are very, very, and so some of our colleagues have taken to selling sidelines, whether they're book lights or bookmarks or the economics of what we do as booksellers is very difficult. But I think what Nan was referring to was is that to be what we do, just what Village Voice and City Lights was to be really selective, not to think about the market so-called, but to think about the quality of the book and like what it's going to bring to our readers, and trusting our readers that they will walk with us as, you know, just kind of the selections that we do. And it's so gratifying to me over the long course of City Lights history, and to see kind of, even though the book Village Voice has been closed now for over 12 years, that how much that resonates and how much people respond to your book, you know, just but it's
well, I
for younger booksellers, you're an inspiration, and that's why we're starting to see more people, kind of like younger people who have much clearer understanding of what they're undertaking than perhaps you or I did when we started. It's like, this, they understand the challenges, but they are also inspired by what we've done.
Yeah, this book, I mean, I was alone, at my desk, it was a lonely years, but it was extraordinary how it was enriching me to reread, those things I had heard, to read them on the paper, to try to give back, what I had received, So for me, it's the emotions, it's the heart, it's the love of it. It's not something paper and just showing this to people. No, it was really something that I felt very, very deep, and I was thanking the authors all the time, and also the people in the room, who were asking those questions and then creating a scene. Each time it was a new scene, a different scene, and it was precious. And it is not just selling books, it's just the sales, it's something else, it's something else. And to continue to be there at the Village Voice for that book was an incredible gift to me, that I could do it.
Well, I would like to interject now, if you don't mind, Paul.
Absolutely.
We've got some questions coming in from the chat, but I would like to maybe begin with a question of my own. Odile, would you talk a little bit about the importance of the physicality of the shop? Because I know that for City Lights, we're this amazing labyrinth, and I think that actually impresses people, simply in the sense of that relationship that you have going through this labyrinth of books. And what was it like for you? Because you mentioned earlier, before we started the program, that your brother was an architect, and that there
Yes.
was, that you had given some thought to how this was going to look.
Yes. Okay. Probably I had something in mind, and what I had in mind is a New York loft. So, so he understood what I wanted, and it was because it was renovated by him, but there was a second renovation 10 years before I closed. So we had two different bookstores, and also it's not just the bookstore itself. I mean, it was on two levels, but those two levels were opened. It was not closed. It was not going up and then have to go down or something like that. It was open, and also we had a system to listen to the readings, to hear the readings downstairs and upstairs, of course. So what it was, it's difficult for me to say exactly the physicality of it. What I know is that people felt good in it, that it was, yeah, you felt at home. As a matter of fact, the young people who came to the Village Voice, the 10 years who made the Village Voice what it became, they called the Village Voice a home, our home away from home. So it just gives you a little bit of that sense. It was very free going. It was very, very simple. It was, people could come, could talk. We did not have to really think immediately of selling the books to them or some. And also the cafe was really nice. And the second renovation was totally different. It was a different architect. It was a totally different, but it gave. We had now many more books, and it allowed it for the bookstore to have a more rational display of the books. It was a little bit easier, I would say, than in the first 20 years. And yeah, but also I feel that the bookstore is not just the place. It's not just the thing that brought people to us. It was also the quartier. It was also Saint-Germain-des-Prés and Rue Princesse, a very narrow street. When I came, when I took that place, it was a wonderful street, and you had the galleries, you had architects, you had also a bookstore, which was a bookstore, with art. and you had still the stone for the lithographs of the great artists of the 20th century, Picasso and many others. So this, I would often go to that bookstore, which was not the usual bookstore, but something with different things. And I would go to that bookstore just to look at that big stone, that had been the piece, that allowed it, artists, to make them lithographs. And it was a very nice street. Now, it's not the same thing. Saint-Germain-des-Prés has become very touristy, and but still, the street is there. But I don't go by at all because something is very missing, and it is the soul of the village voice.
Did you have a place that you would like to go to with your colleagues and authors and other visitors, like a bar restaurant close by that became?
Yes, we had one on Rue Princesse. After the readings, so we could go there, and it was a Chinese. It was Vietnamese. It was a Vietnamese place, and there were two sisters who had that place, and it was very nice, very good food, and we often would go there after the readings. Yes, definitely. Yes. It was very nearby, and it was easy and always very pleasant. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We have another question.
Like similarly, go ahead, Peter.
Sorry. Yeah. Nancy asks, contemporary American poets like Dennis Cooper and Alice Notley moved to Paris. Could you discuss the experience in Paris of American poets?
Good question.
Many poets. We had many poets in Paris, and we still have many poets in Paris. For instance, Allen Ginsberg is a fantastic poet. She lives in Paris. She shares, Paris. She's often in Germany because she teaches in Germany, but she still lives in Paris. C.K. Williams, Charlie Williams, extraordinary poet, extraordinary poet. We have Berdichevsky, Margot Berdichevsky, in Paris. We had so many of them. I'm sorry because I hear it's so many of them. But what is the life? What was the life? It was a community, I believe. It was a kind of a community, and the poets, among the authors we had at the Village Voice, the largest community was the poets. It was the poets, and every week we had a poetry reading practically every week. So how did they live? It's difficult to say, but when they came to the Village Voice, they could talk between themselves. They were, they were introducing other poets, and many often we had poets together. For instance, well, the names do not come to me right now, but I see their faces and I see what they wrote, and I know exactly, their personalities. And no, it was very important. Yes, and we had those poets from all kinds of ways. I mean, from classic poets, poets who were in language poets. We had language poets as well. We lived in Paris, and yes, many poets. Yeah.
Jay asks, where in Paris are you living now? And when you're not doing these book talks, how are you enjoying your life?
I lived in the 14th, which is a very nice area near Montparnasse, and an area where many writers in the 20s used to live. What do I do with my time? My God, I feel that the time is going so fast. To launch this book was a lot of work, and to write the book was a lot of work. And I also learn other languages. Spanish, I do. I again, speak Russian with some friends who are Russian. I mean, I don't know, and I read a lot, and I do a lot of things, but time is really running fast. I mean, a day is not enough for me to do everything I want to do, all the things I want to do. So yes, it's I live in Paris, and I love to live in Paris. I love the city, and I will not live anywhere else. And I hope I can stay in the city as long as I live. Yeah.
Rukshan asks, I loved your writing style. I especially enjoyed the parts where you talked about your childhood and the decisions you made later in life. Would you consider writing a book as a memoir solely based on your lived experience, not only as a bookseller, but as a person of different identities?
Yeah, it is something that I have in mind, and for a long time I had this in mind, but it will not be a book to sell or to publish. No, it would be a book for my nephews. I have a lot of nephews, and it would be for them to know a little bit the history of their family, where they come from, and not to lose what I lived through, what I discovered, what I learned from my mother and from my sister and brother. And I feel that it is very precious because life today is very different. And it's only for them that I would do it. It's for me, it's my legacy. And in fact, I am in a hurry to start this work and to be at my desk and to write. In fact, this is what I love to do, to be a little bit alone and to be with books and to write. So, I'm going to do it, but each thing in its own time. And for the moment, I'm launching this book, and I cannot do much besides that. Yeah.
As we find ourselves at the top of the hour, Paul, did you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I have many, many, but one of the questions I really want to ask Odile is, what are you reading now that you're loving?
Okay, so this what I'm reading now. In fact, um, I have been reading books by authors who read at the Village Voice. And I really I was curious to know how they had evolved in their writing, in their themes and so on. And in fact, you are speaking about Jake Lamar. Jake has just written a beautiful book, Viper's Dream. And it's a book that got, a big award, the gold,
Dagger.
Dagger, yeah, award. And this book is a departure from the books, from the former books or earlier books that he wrote. It's a departure since he is plunging the reader into the jazz of Harlem in the 40s, 50s, and so on. It's a very, very beautiful book, and Jake is very talented, and I loved also is a play, about all those people in Paris who were fighting a lot with each other, but still they were very talented. Richard Wright, Baldwin, all these people. She wrote a fantastic play about this, about the frictions between them, and at the same time, the talented people they were, and besides all the political problems, of the Cold War and so on. But not Jake, and I'm also reading. I've read it. A book by Denise Herson, writer who lived his youth in South Africa, and who wrote many books about South Africa, what is used. And his latest one is very, very good, and it's a really very strong book, and it's called the 15-minute bar mitzvah, my 15-minute bar mitzvah, and it's very poignant because it's about his youth when his father in South Africa was taken to one of those prison fortresses of fierce prisons of South Africa, and he was deprived of his father for 9 years, and he was now able to tell the story. The other stories he told us at the Village Voice, he read at the Village Voice, were something different. It was his childhood, but at the same time, you could feel that there was something else. But it's only now that he's going through that what it meant to be deprived of a father, who was 9 years, away from you, and not even able to see him, to visit him. A beautiful book. And then what I read as well. I read as well, Knife by Rushdie, which is extraordinary because the way he writes something that is so difficult to write about, and at the same time, the way he says, I had to write this book because it's art that saves us, it's art that saves that kind of things, that kind of experience, through art you can really accept it, so this was very beautiful too. And now I'm reading a lot, as a matter of fact, but to have them all right now in my head, no. But no, I not, and I read also Lauren Groff as well, and I'm so happy to hear that she has opened a bookstore to display all those books, that are taken away from the shelves in libraries and bookstores, all those extraordinary classics, and that people cannot read them, young people cannot read them in school and so on. It's absolutely terrifying. So it was really, great to meet her as well. I mean, I saw her at Festival America this year in Paris. And no, I don't stop reading. I am reading all the time, all the time. But it's not always easy to have all the books you've just read in your mind. But I do read a lot.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being able to have this conversation with you. I can't express how joyful I am to be able to have this privilege.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, because you ask questions, and it was very lively and different wise. We did not speak so much about authors, for instance, Susan Sontag, I loved her very much. It was extraordinary. And so many other people, Russell Banks, and Ford as well. I mean, so many of them. I mean, the book is there to read and to get into the mind of all those people. But thank you so much. And I really, invite you to come to Paris. Not to the Village Voice, but to come to Paris, and there are good bookstores as well. Even Anglo-Saxon, English language bookstores, very good. And it will be a pleasure to have you in Paris.
Well, I'll be there in June, so
okay.
I'm meeting with my Oulipo friends. So
okay. Mr. Maris or Peter, really we'll meet in June, definitely, and maybe also Paul, if you can,
as soon as possible. But
as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the talk and for the conversation, and for gracefully, accepting my little mistakes here and there, and things like that. Yes.
It was such an honor and such a pleasure. And congratulations, really, on this wonderful, wonderful book. And Paul, thank you for doing the honors. I much appreciate that as well.
My privilege.
I mean, to have the two of you in one place, this is really fantastic. And for those of you in the audience, thanks so much for asking all those great questions and for your support. And if you enjoyed today's event, we have another event coming up on Monday, which Paul is a part of as well. City Lights is hosting Edwin Frank of NYRB. So anyone who's been in City Lights, of course, knows that we carry a full selection of those books. His new book is called Stranger Than Fiction, and you may register for that event on our website. We have posted links in the chat function with which you may purchase copies of Village Voices, as well as Paul's book, Reading the Room. And better yet, if you're in the neighborhood, come on down, pay us a visit. We are located in San Francisco's historic North Beach district. We are open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. And today's event has been made possible by support from the City Lights Foundation, fostering an active engagement with books and literary culture through our public events, our publishing program, and our educational outreach, all dedicated to sustaining a vibrant community of readers, writers, and independent thinkers. So take care, everyone. Be well, be kind to each other. We hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.